I've had a fully sentient, self-aware female dragon following me around for 10 plus years. This is the first time I've told anyone about this, and I feel insane just writing it. So yeah. First off, I don't imagine anything else. I'm a successful small business owner, and I have no history of mental illness, other than the occasional, once or twice a year, bout of depression. I didn't even play pretend as a child, and I never had an imaginary friend. Maybe I'm just making up for that now? I don't know. I'm 30 years old, and I live alone unless you count Alira, a pearl white dragon who I've known for several lifetimes. It all started with a very vivid dream back in 2010. The dream itself didn't make much sense. It was more like flashes of memory than an actual interactive dream. In the first flash, I was living in a cave with a dragon, sleeping next to it on a small, improvised cot. Then I saw myself. I was in a different human's body, but I somehow knew it was me, if that makes any sense. I was skinning a deer and preparing it next to a fire. Then in the next flash, I saw myself hugging this dragon. Both our eyes were closed, and I felt a sense of love that I've never felt in my current life. Then in the next flash, I saw us by a river, and I was an old man. This was the first time I was able to discern her gender, went into the water to bathe, and I simply sat there on the bank of the river, enjoying the gentle breeze. Then another flash, and I was looking out of our cave, down at a village near a lake, and I heard the most horrifying scream I've ever heard in my mind. It was a telepathic scream, if that makes any sense. I knew instantly that it was her. Then another flash, and I was in front of her. She was lying halfway in the shallow water of the lake that was near the village, her body covered in wounds, a few dozen arrows sticking out of her. She was covered in blood. The humans who lived in the settlement had mortally wounded her, but she wasn't dead yet. I ran into the shallow water to be with her and collapsed onto my knees. The feeling of dread and horror was so intense. I did my best to comfort her, and with her last ounce of strength, she lifted her head and we kissed. I begged her not to leave me, but she succumbed to her wounds shortly thereafter. I woke up sobbing. It had felt absolutely real. Although the dream wasn't detailed, the emotions were raw and extremely intense. I cried for hours before forcing myself to get up and get ready. I kept going over the dream in my mind over and over, and I was an absolute mess the entire day. I'd never made so many mistakes in my entire life, and I had to leave early and leave everything up to my employees before I ended up, fucking something up majorly. At this point, I didn't know the dragon's name or anything about her. All I knew is that I had intense feelings for her. It took several days, but I finally came to accept that these were memories. I had tried to brush them off as best I could. I didn't believe in reincarnation, let alone dragons. But the memories were so real. I couldn't have just pulled these events out of my ass, to be frank. And her, I couldn't have just imagined her. Shortly thereafter, I started feeling like I was being watched. I'd get chills down my spine for no reason. This feeling continued when I was alone, and eventually I came to realize that it was her. I was feeling her presence. I started talking to her and asking if she were real. I felt like a fucking schizo, but when I would talk to her and ask her questions, the answers would just come to me. It's hard to explain. It wasn't speech, but more like a primitive form of telepathic communication. I couldn't see her, but I could feel her presence. Eventually, I started to, quote-unquote, hear her voice. I say hear in parentheses because just like I couldn't see her with my eyes, I couldn't actually hear her with my ears. The best way I can describe it is, let's say, you're hearing a character's voice in your mind from a cartoon show. Say, for example, Mickey Mouse. You can't really hear Mickey Mouse, but you know exactly what it would sound like if you were to say something. Her voice was very distinctive, furthering my belief that what I was dealing with was real and not some figment of my imagination. Can you just invent a distinctive sounding voice in your head? I don't know. I decided to try, just to see if I could, and I couldn't. Anyway, now that I could hear her, I opened the floodgates and started asking her about herself and about my dream and what I believed to be memories that had surfaced. And she started to fill in the details. Her name was Elira, and according to her, we were mates in a past life. My dream had actually been real, memories from back then, and my remembering her is what helped her to come through to this physical reality and be able to talk to me like this. She told me that she'd been looking for me for a long time, and she was so happy and excited to finally see me again. After she had found me, she caused my memories to surface in my dreams so that she could be with me again. At this point, I'm pretty suspicious. In the back of my mind, I haven't dismissed the idea that I might be going crazy, but putting that aside for a moment, I remember the ancient superstitions from many different cultures. Demons in the Christian religion, for example, or the jinn from Islam, the kitsune from Japanese mythology, the succubus from English folklore. They all have one thing in common. They're evil tricksters that interact with humans, in some cases seducing them in order to harm them. Now, I'm an educated man with a background in science, and I've never put much faith or credence in the existence of these creatures or these myths. But to be frank, the existence of such a creature sounded more believable than what she was telling me. That was when I first became aware of the fact that she could read my mind. She was quite confused by my thoughts and asked me what those things I was thinking about, demons and succubi or succubus, whatever the plural of succubus is. She didn't know what those things were. And only then did I realize that we had been together so long ago that it predated Christianity, which is like, holy crap. Now, I did some research later, and I've approximated the date to be about 4,000 years ago. So, anyway, we talked for so freaking long. Apparently, reincarnation is real, but not for dragons. When dragons die, they go to a place she calls Eutheria. It's a place where space, time, and thought are all one and the same. It is possible for a dragon to leave Eutheria for brief periods of time, no more than, a few days. but they're like fish out of water and must go back there to sustain their life force. I'm completely blown away by all of this. There's no way I could be making all this stuff up on the spot. But one thing really bothers me. So I decide to ask her why there are no dragon bones if dragons really existed. I mean, people find dinosaur bones, and theoretically dinosaurs died off a long time ago, way before, dragons went extinct. She was quite surprised by my question, but she didn't miss a beat. According to her, when a dragon dies, the body dissolves completely within a few days. I have no idea how that works, but honestly, neither do the dragons. Dragons had a comparatively advanced culture, but since they went extinct thousands of years ago, that culture is quite old and primitive by today's standards. They had no concept of chemistry or science or math or any of the stuff that we take for granted nowadays. So she's not able to explain to me, why their bodies actually dissolve. All she knows is that they do. Maybe somebody with a background in biochemistry can come up with some sort of cogent theory as to why that happens, but whatever. Anyway, so we get to know each other over the next few weeks. I know what she looks like only from my memories, which she helps me to recover more of. She keeps calling me by the name I had back then, and not my current name, which I find mildly annoying, but I can understand why she does this. It's bad enough that I'm in a completely different body now, and calling me by my old name makes her feel better about it. She has quite a snide, snarky, sarcastic sense of humor, which is definitely not me. The following events happened a few weeks later. I remember, just randomly thinking something along the lines of, seriously? A human and a dragon? How would that even work? And she heard my thoughts, and out of the blue, she said, "I would think that would be obvious, but do you need a demonstration?" I still wasn't used to the fact that she could hear every thought I had. I got quite embarrassed when she said that, and she thought it was really funny. This led to our first conversation about our physical relationship. It made me quite uncomfortable, to be honest, but I got through it relatively unscathed. Thankfully, she realized how uncomfortable I was, and didn't make any more jokes about it. It was difficult to understand how it all worked, since I couldn't actually see anything. But she shared her own memories with me, and allowed me to see through her eyes during the act. This was my first experience with memory sharing, and it was quite overwhelming. Not only do you get the memory, but you also get the residual emotions and sensations. Needless to say, I know what sex feels like for a woman now, or a female dragon, at least. But more importantly, I also felt her emotions. And it was then that I truly realized how much she loved me. I was suddenly filled with sadness because I realized that I'd never truly be able to be with her again. Sure, we were communicating, but that's not a relationship. I couldn't help but cry. Part of me hated that she had found me and given me these memories, but another part of me couldn't imagine living without them, any more than I could imagine living without her. Verbal communication wasn't necessary. She knew what I was thinking, and she apologized for bringing it all back to me. She really started to doubt herself, saying that maybe the past should be left in the past, and she offered to wipe my memories and return to Eutheria. I I felt a panic unlike anything I've ever experienced when she suggested that. I didn't want to forget, I just wanted the pain to go away. And that's when she kissed me. I could feel her love for me, and she could feel mine for her. The sensation was mostly emotional and not physical, but I swear I could feel her lips against mine, just barely, and I wept. We spent the night crying and comforting each other, but in the morning, she was gone. I panicked even worse than I had last night. I could no longer feel her presence, and she no longer responded to me when I talked to her. She had gone back to Eutheria. I knew it. I spent the entire day in bed, curled up in a ball, thinking about her, terrified that she was really gone. I started to doubt myself, thinking that maybe I'd had some sort of psychotic episode that somehow lasted for weeks, while allowing me to function normally otherwise. Maybe I was developing some sort of dissociative disorder, brought on by the traumatic dream. I don't know. I felt like shit. I thought I was going crazy, and that the reality I'd be forced to live in would be the one where I was miserable all the time. I knew that there were happy crazy people and miserable crazy people, and unfortunately, I was going to be one of the latter. I must have been pretty bad off, because I suddenly heard Alira call my name in a worried voice. The happiness I felt at that moment was indescribable. She was back. When my mood improved so quickly, she realized why I had been so fucked up, and apologized profusely. She had needed to return to Eutheria last night, and wanted to tell me that she'd be gone, but she couldn't wake me. It was then that she told me that we would be able to interact physically if we worked hard at it. I was quite surprised, but also pretty happy. Unfortunately, it's not like I imagined it would be, but we are able to physically feel each other. The way Elira describes it is that while she's not able to interact with physical reality, she can interact with reality on an energy level. Apparently, there's a form of energy closely related to electricity that scientists haven't discovered yet. But since it's closely related to electricity, sometimes these energies can interact with each other. So while she can't actually touch my hand, her energy can interact with the nerves in my hand on an electrical level. It's gotten to the point now where I can feel her, not directly on my hand, but the electrical impulses travel from the nerves in my hand directly to my brain when she stimulates them electrically. Since the brain associates those nerves with my hand, I can actually feel something against my hand. But it's more like ghost touches, more than a physical solid object, if that makes any sense. It's absolutely not, physical like a solid object. I can feel her against my hand, but if I move my hand, I'll go through her, and the sensation will be gone. It's a very weird feeling, unlike anything I've ever experienced before. I can tell you this, though. It's more than enough to wake me up if she touches me in my sleep. Speaking of which, Alira doesn't sleep. The energy she gets from Eutheria is enough to sustain her. She does still have a body, though. Back when we lived in the cave, I would sometimes sleep on her belly, usually after sex. But I'd also sleep on a cot on the floor next to her sometimes, and she'd cover me with her wing protectively. It's something that dragons do instinctively with their young, and she has a hard time suppressing her maternal instinct with me sometimes. She really wanted to have children, but she gave that up for me. See, dragons mate for life and have very strict mating rituals. So she couldn't just mate with another dragon just to have kids and then stay with me and, I still remember our wedding. Her brother fucking hated me. He challenged the validity of the wedding and challenged me to a fight to the death in order to prevent us from getting married. I remember being so fucking terrified and her stepping between us and insisting that he back down. Looking back, it feels kind of emasculating, but these are dragons, for fuck's sake, okay? The strongest human on Earth couldn't best one. So I guess it's okay that my strong dragon mate stood up for me. Her father, the father of the female dragon always officiates the wedding. Her father sided with her brother and insisted that the duel be allowed, as it was tradition. I still remember the fire in her eyes as she told them, in no uncertain terms, that she was going to marry me, and there was nothing they could do to stop her. The whole situation was very tense, and I could not wait to get out of there. Thankfully, her father reluctantly acquiesced and completed the ceremony. When we left, I felt like I had just robbed the jewelry store. We both felt so giddy with excitement. I remember her flying erratically as we made our way back to our cave. I was riding her, of course. Dragons don't really walk as a means of travel. I remember feeling exhilarated, but also quite frightened, and I really had to concentrate on holding on because she was flying so erratically in her excitement. When we got back to the cave, we had sex for hours. Oh my word. I was so sore, but honestly, I didn't care. That night when we went to sleep together, it was the most content and peaceful I'd ever been. I still consider her my wife, even though we were married in another lifetime. I still remember the first day we met. I was a simple textile merchant. I would buy textiles from one town, if you want to call it that. The population of these so-called towns was less than 100. So I basically take these cloths, these textiles, and I would buy them in one town and travel and sell them to a clothier in another town. So anyway, the trip between the towns normally took several days, but there was a shortcut over the mountain. Nobody wanted to take that shortcut because it was rumored that a dragon lived up there, but I figured I could take care of myself. I still don't remember much about my family from back then, but I know that my father gave me a sword. It was nothing impressive, but common people really couldn't afford weapons like this, so it was very special. I trained with it when I was younger, hoping to one day become a warrior. But my life took a different path, and I ended up becoming a traveling merchant instead. So anyway, I've got my sword strapped to my side, and I'm pulling my cart up this mountain. I'll tell you this, wooden wheels suck. It was tough going, but eventually I made the way to the top of the mountain. It wasn't really the top, it was more like the tallest point of the path. The path actually stretched around the mountain, not straight up it, if that makes any sense. As luck would have it, as soon as I got up to the tallest point of the path on the mountain, it started raining. I did have a deerskin cover on my cart, in case it did rain, but it wasn't, very effective. I mean, this was 4,000 years ago, so use your imagination. I knew that my wares were going to get damaged, but there wasn't much I could do about it, so I kept going and hoped that the rain would stop soon. Suddenly, I spotted a cave up ahead, and without thinking, I rushed inside. I was glad to find shelter so that my fabrics wouldn't get ruined, my, textiles, whatever you want to call them. I didn't speak English back then, so I'm trying to approximate here. Anyway, So anyway, I stay at the mouth of this cave. I don't want to stay there any longer than I have to. I mean, the sooner I deliver the fabrics to the clothier, the sooner I get paid, right? So, I didn't really think much about the supposed dragon that lives up here. People are always telling tall tales, and, especially in the pub, which is where I heard this rumor. To be honest, I was more worried about bears, but I had my sword, so I wasn't, worried that much. I mean, by today's standards, I would not want to face a bear with a sword, but back then we didn't live in this sterilized world with no natural predators, having to deal with bears and wild animals was, just a fact of life back then. So, anyway, so I'm here in the mouth of this cave, and suddenly I hear something behind me. So I get my sword out and turn to face it, thinking, maybe it's a deer or a bear or God only knows, right? But to my horror, I came face to face with this pearl white dragon. Her lips were curled back in a snarl as she was approaching me. She did not look happy. I briefly considered, making a run for it, but I realized that this dragon was going to catch me if I ran, so I decided to stand my ground. For some reason, I spoke. I yelled, get back. I don't want to hurt you, but, I will if I have to. To be honest, I don't know why I said that. I had no idea that she could understand me. She didn't understand the language, but she could, read my thoughts as I projected them. Telepathy is really hard to explain. It's not like the movies, okay? Telepathy is really, okay, moving on. Anyway, I had no idea that, that she could talk or, telepathically, of course. But, as I looked at her, I could tell that there was intelligence there. But still, when I heard her voice in my head, I was quite surprised. She was like, "Why are you here, human?" And I almost freaking dropped my sword in surprise. But I recovered as quickly as I could. I didn't want to freaking die. So I said, well, I needed shelter from the rain. And she looked over at the cart and then back at me and asked me, what is this? Referring to the cart, what is this? Or what is that? At this point, I realized how hard my heart was pounding in my chest. I was too distracted to notice it before, but it was definitely noticeable to me now. We spent the next few minutes getting all the talking and getting all the facts straight. And, once it was clear that neither of us was really interested in hurting the other, we were both able to relax, a bit. She actually let me stay there until the rain passed, and we talked for hours. The relationship between dragons and humans was, frankly, pretty terrible. Humans saw dragons as mindless, ferocious beasts, and dragons saw humans as violent and dangerous. I suppose both interpretations had an element of truth to them, but, while dragons weren't exactly mindless beasts, they did attack humans, and while most humans weren't dangerous to dragons, they did kill them sometimes. So, this is 4,000 years ago, so... Anyway, she would have definitely killed me had I not made it clear that I didn't want to, hurt her. I imagine that's how most interactions between humans and dragons went, since humans didn't know that, dragons could, talk, communicate telepathically, and dragons viewed humans as violent savages. Their natural reactions to meeting each other, would be an act of violence. So, anyway, this has really turned into a massive exposition dump here. I wasn't trying to write a fucking story here. I was just trying to get my thoughts onto paper. I highly doubt I'll actually post this somewhere, but it helps to tell someone about it. My Main problem now is that I still love her, and as bad as it makes me feel to say this, I feel like it's holding me back. I mean, I'm almost 30 now, and I'm not married. I've never had any serious girlfriends. I mean, every time I go out with a girl, Elira gets severely depressed, and, I end up breaking up with the girl out of guilt because, I don't want to hurt Alira. And, if Elira still had physical form, I would leave this modern life in an instant, go live in a cave with her again. But, she's not really here anymore. I feel like we're both in some sort of purgatory, unable to move on. The worst part is I know I can never go to Eutheria, and Alira can never come back to my reality. We are forever separated, but we can communicate with each other, and even physically interact with one another on a limited level. And she's still my wife. How can I forget about her after all we've been through? And because I know someone's going to ask about this, as for sex, yes, we have tried it. I was pretty reluctant at first, but she convinced me to try to, have sex with her, and unfortunately, the way she physically interacts with me by electrically stimulating my nerves isn't really enough to, stimulate me to orgasm. And similarly, the stimulation isn't, really enough for her either. So a couple of times, we did resort to just masturbating ourselves while we, made out. I don't know how else to say it. But we haven't done this in years. It depresses both of us. We still kiss, but we don't do anything sexual together anymore, because it's just a reminder of, how we'll never truly be able to be together again. I would do anything to be able to be with her physically one more time. I wish there was a way to strengthen our physical bond, but neither of us, knows how. Anyway, I should mention that Alira doesn't understand English or really any human language. She communicates telepathically, and telepathy transcends language. When we watch TV, she simply reads my mind in real time, so she knows what's going on. Same thing when it comes to reading. She can't read, but, when I read things, she can read my mind when I'm reading and understand what the book or the website or whatever is saying. Speaking of which, a few days ago, we were watching TV in the living room, and it was getting pretty late, and I was getting tired, so I decided to get up and go to bed. And she's like, "Wait, can't you stay and finish the movie with me?" And I'm like, "Ugh," but I said, "No, I'll leave it on for you." And in my sleepy state, I forgot that I needed to watch it with her so she could read my mind to be able to understand what was going on. I should really teach her English, but it's usually not an issue. As an analogy, think of it like the universal translator in Star Trek. Everybody seems to be speaking the same language, and you don't even think about the fact that you don't speak each other's languages until the universal translator goes offline, of course, and suddenly you're up shit creek without a paddle. Anyway, I can't actually read her mind, as humans aren't a telepathic species, but she can read mine and project her, so-called speech into my mind. But I can't actually listen in on her thoughts. Our relationship is a little lopsided because of this, but it's always been this way, so I'm used to it. When she helped me to recover my memories, it took days of intense effort on her part to help me remember everything. Some memories are clearer and more detailed than others, but I can tell you this, These memories feel as real to me as anything that's happened to me in this life. This experience has completely changed my view of religion. I mean, I used to be a complete atheist, but now I wouldn't exactly call myself religious per se, but I think there are truths to be had in many different religions, and I don't dismiss things out of hand anymore. Elira helped me through college immensely. Her memory is fucking amazing. I mean, it's way better than mine. It really felt like I was cheating on every test because she was there to help me. I mean, if I couldn't remember something, she always seemed to have the answer. She would sit with me and read my mind the whole time I was studying, committing everything I thought and read to memory. In one embarrassing moment, I was taking a history test, and I couldn't seem to come up with the answer. I actually said out loud, "No, now don't tell me. Let me get it on my own." And I actually said that out loud during the test. I meant to think it, not say it, but I was so desperate to find the answer on my own, and I didn't want her to just blurt out the answer like she usually did when I was struggling. I mean, don't get me wrong, I appreciated her help, but sometimes it was really annoying. I was in college to actually learn the material myself, not have this dragon best me at every opportunity. You know, she made me feel like a fucking dumb kid sometimes. You know, a few heads turned my way, but thankfully nothing came of it. I blushed red as a tomato, though. It was definitely not a pleasant experience. To this day, she helps me work and reminds me of things. Yesterday, I was fixing an old computer of mine when I went to put the cover back on. Alira was like, "Hey, wait, you haven't put the cable back all the way." So I took the cover back off, and sure enough, the SATA cable wasn't connected, properly. So, little things like this that happen, help me believe that, I'm not crazy. I mean, I had no idea, at least not consciously, that cable wasn't fully connected. When I sleep, she sometimes puts her wing over me like she used to do back in the cave. It's very comforting, and I always sleep better when she does this. It's an amazing feeling to be cared for like this. Our size difference becomes very apparent when she does this. She's so big and powerful. Her large size, combined with her ability to read my mind, while I can't really read hers, makes our relationship feel a little, unequal sometimes. If I didn't remember our past, I'd feel terribly inadequate and unworthy of her. Without our past, I'd have a hell of a time starting a relationship with her as the person I am, in this life. But our past helps bridge this gap. Even though this is a different lifetime for me, I'm still the same person inside. The way I think is, quite different since I was raised in a completely different time and culture in this life. But I'm still fundamentally the same person she fell in love with. And since I have my memories of this past life, it's almost like I'm an amalgamation of two people now. So, Alira has learned to love me the way, that I am now, even though there are cultural differences and differences in the way that I think. I don't know if I'm describing this in a way that makes sense, but I guess another way to think of it is, although some parts of me have changed, my soul, for lack of a better word, hasn't. Oh boy, I mean, she's so beautiful and majestic. I mean, although I can't see her, with my eyes, I can sense her. She helps me by projecting her mental image of herself when she talks to me. It's not 100% accurate, but every little bit helps. So when I see her, I use a combination of my memories, of what she looks like, my sense of her, and I also get to see, the way she mentally projects herself. these three things combine to allow me to see her, if that makes any sense. Elira spends most of her time here and spends as little time as possible in Eutheria. Still, sometimes she's gone for 12 plus hours and I feel really lonely. She still eats and drinks, but only while she's in Eutheria. She can't, really eat in this physical reality anymore. When she goes back to Eutheria, she spends the whole time resting and hunting to build up her strength before, she comes back. She returns, Her whole family is in Eutheria. I mean, hell, her whole species is in Eutheria. Dragons are extinct after all. Dragons were extremely long-lived. She was only 97 when I met her, but dragons live to be 2,000 to 2,500 years old, and even older in some cases. But that's the general range. Now I know what you're thinking. Why didn't she have a mate after 97 years? I mean, that's a long time. There is no age of consent with dragons, but they're definitely mature way before 97. But like I said, dragons have very strict mating rituals. They don't have the same cavalier attitude about sex as modern humans do. They don't just have sex for fun. While premarital sex is accepted and actually common, dragons don't have sex unless they plan to make that partner, their mate. Basically the way it works is two dragons develop feelings for each other and then they mate, and then after that they have to formalize their mating with a marriage, for lack of a better word. The only time two dragons, have sex and don't really marry each other is if one of the family members doubts the validity of the marriage and challenges the bride or groom, in a duel to the death. I'm improvising words here. They're not really called bride and groom in dragon society, but I don't really know what they're called. I don't remember, and I still really don't know a whole lot about dragon mating rituals, despite the fact that I actually went through with one, but I had no clue about any of this when we first had sex. I mean, it was only afterwards that she explained the gravity of what we'd done, for her species. Of course, I was deeply in love with her by then, and, I had no qualms about marrying her. We didn't just decide to have sex, for fun. Our relationship developed, naturally over a period of, about 9 months. 8-9 months. I don't know exactly. At first, we were just friends. I thought of her as a close friend, but eventually I realized that I cared about her much more deeply than that. We were pretty close friends. We hugged and touched a lot in general, but one day when I was touching the scales on her face, I had an uncontrollable urge to kiss her, and I did. And to my surprise, she ran with it, and before I knew what was happening, we were having sex, and it was so natural. It was a bit awkward because our bodies were so different, but they weren't different enough to prevent us from mating. Sure, there is the size difference, but, it wasn't as big as you'd think, and, we were also able to share, the pleasure we felt telepathically, Kissing a dragon is it's a unique experience, but the whole physical aspect of a relationship with a dragon is unique, but somehow it works. It's hard to explain it in writing, and it's hard to imagine it in your mind, but the parts work. No one was more surprised than I. Holy crap. So far, I've gotten over 5,000 words in here, and I'm just barfing this out here on the page. If I actually tried to write a story about this, I could probably turn it into a novel, but unfortunately, I'm not a writer, so to be honest, I'm at the time of writing this. So first of all, I'm almost like reading from a script here. I actually typed this out before I decided to record this on and put it on YouTube. And the reason I did that was because it is so freaking long by the time I finally got all my thoughts and stuff out on the page. But what you're hearing now is me just reading, what I had written. So anyway, I'm going to continue here. I was a little concerned that she was going to find out about all my feelings that I had written out here. But I knew she was going to find out when she finally got back from Eutheria. But I can't hide anything from her. She reads me like an open book. I mean, literally, because she can read my mind. I wonder what she was going to think about the fact that I was actually writing this all out. But she already knows all this stuff that I've said, even if I haven't told her all this stuff directly. She knows. So anyway, well, she found out about this 10 seconds after she got back, and she asked me to read it, read what I'd written to her. She approves of me posting this online, so I guess I will. She's as interested as I am to see what people's reactions and responses are going to be. I just hope, someone is still here after 5,000 words of diarrhea on a page, Seriously, I didn't plan the structure of this thing at all. I just typed what I was thinking as I was thinking it. I sincerely apologize, but thanks for reading my exposition dump, I guess. And any advice you have, about us would be greatly appreciated. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. If you want to ask Alira something, try not to ask anything too technical. I'm a very logical and scientific person myself, and I've tried to ask her many things, but she just can't explain the why or the how. Like I said, dragon culture is quite primitive compared to modern human culture, so she can't explain anything on a technical or science-related basis. And Eutheria is basically beyond human comprehension. She's actually done memory sharing with me, and I still don't, fully understand it, and I certainly can't explain it. I can tell you that it's a wonderful place, and she's sacrificing a lot by spending most of her time here with me. I actually feel guilty keeping her here, but she's made it clear on many occasions that it's her choice to stay here with me. I love her so much, but the truth is, she's not able to live this life with me. Not having kids doesn't really bother me, but I'm missing out on so much by not having a human, wife or girlfriend. I mean, just the act of living. I mean, Alira can't really help me beyond talking to me and giving me advice. I mean, we can't grow old together or combine our finances, or, we can't really see or touch each other. She can't, do physical things with me, like, help me, drive me to the doctors, or, we can't take care of each other if we get sick. I mean, and as for her, I mean, I can't help her hunt or help her with any of the obscure things she has to deal with in Eutheria. I mean, like I said, I don't really understand Eutheria, but I do know that she could use help over there. I mean, she could really use a mate over there to help her, just like I could use a mate here on Earth to help me, Our love is so pure and so strong, and we had an absolutely wonderful relationship back then. I wish more than anything that we could have that again, but we can't. I mean, it's just not fair. Part of me wants to move on, but I just can't. I'll try to get through this next part without crying, but no promises. After she died, I went through what is known by modern science as catatonic grief or catatonic depression. I was so distraught, and I was sobbing so hard as she was dying, but as soon as I realized she was dead, I just shut down. I mean, I remember walking out of the village, and I just kept walking. I have no idea how far I walked, but I eventually collapsed on the road from exhaustion. I was found by some sort of, I don't know, monk or religious person. He helped nurse me back to health. He took me to what I suppose was an abbey of some sort. I have no idea what religion it was, or even if it was a religious community. My memories of this are very vague, but all I know is that after her death, I never spoke again. I eventually came out of that catatonic state, but I never spoke. They thought I was just, disabled or retarded in some way, and they put me to work doing various tasks around the community. But, I was an old man by the time she died, and I only lived a few more years after that. I still remember my death. It felt like such a relief because I didn't have to live without her anymore. This is where I was breaking up before, but a little more in control of my emotions here, but I'll read what I wrote. I wrote, "I'm sorry, but I'm starting to tear up. I have to stop writing before I completely break down." Unfortunately, it was too late. Thinking back on these memories is very painful for me, and I broke down sobbing. Alira helped to comfort me, but eventually she ended up crying too, and we did our best to comfort each other. Being telepathic, we sometimes share emotions. So when one of us is sad or happy, it kind of bleeds. We kind of share that emotional state. So I love her so much, but I can't help but feel like I've done a shit job at describing my true feelings for her. It's just not possible for mere words on a page, to convey these feelings. I don't know if you've ever felt romantic love before. I hadn't until Alira came back into my life. I didn't truly understand love in my current lifetime, until her. It's easy to confuse lust and love, but that's not really an issue with Alira and I. Although I would love, to mate with her in this reality, and I would if I could in a heartbeat. I love her, but I don't lust after her. Our relationship is beyond sex. It always has been. Even the first time we mated, it wasn't really about sex at all. It would just happen so naturally. I don't remember a lot of specifics about the human culture I was a part of back then, but I do know the fact that she was a dragon wasn't really a mental, hold-up or hang-up for me. I wasn't attracted, to her per se, but when we mated, it was just a natural expression of our feelings, for each other. It was unlike anything I've experienced in this lifetime. I've dated twice in the 10 years since Alira came back, and each time made me feel terrible. Not only did I feel extremely guilty, but I could feel her anguish telepathically. Thankfully, I never had sex with these girls that I dated, but I did kiss one of them and nearly threw up. That was when I realized that I just couldn't do it. Elira has offered to erase my memories several times over the years, but I could never let her do that. She knows that I want someone to share my life with in this reality or dimension or whatever, but she can't help but feel horrible when I think about this. To be honest, I would feel horrible too if she were to want to be with another dragon in Eutheria, but that's not even an option for her anyway. You see, this isn't an issue for any other dragon. Mating outside your species is basically unheard of in dragon culture. So dragons are naturally with their mates forever in Eutheria. Elira had no dragon mate when she was here on Earth, so she has no dragon mate in Eutheria. She literally spent thousands of years looking for me, and she has no idea how long it will take her to find me again when I die. From what I understand, Eutheria is eternal. Dragons don't die in Eutheria. Apparently there are other creatures that live there, as she has talked about hunting, but I have no idea if Eutheria is their afterlife or if they move on to another dimension when they die. Unfortunately, there are more questions than answers when it comes to, Eutheria here. And before you ask, no, dragons don't die if they don't go back to Eutheria. The fish out of water analogy that I used earlier wasn't entirely accurate. The way Alira described it to me is like, it's like a rubber band. If she doesn't go back willingly when her energy is low, the band snaps and she's instantly flung back there. The longer she stays on Earth, the more the rubber band is stretched until it eventually snaps and she winds up back in Eutheria. Dragons don't have to eat in order to stay alive either, but without food, they're not able to do much. She wouldn't have the energy to leave Eutheria if she didn't eat, and other spiritual, that is like non-physical things, aren't possible without the energy they get from food. You see, in Eutheria, dragons are able to interact with each other on more than just the physical level. It's beyond telepathy even. I can't explain it or even describe it. It's like trying to describe color to a man who was born blind. Color is beyond his comprehension because he doesn't have that sense, the sense of sight. We humans don't have those senses that dragons have in Eutheria, so it's impossible to explain them. Alira has shared her memories of Eutheria with me, but she can't share a sense that I don't have. So the only way I can perceive it is by experiencing the way it makes her feel when she uses those senses. I can tell you that Eutheria is an absolutely wonderful place, and she's sacrificing a lot by spending most of her time here with me. She hasn't actually said it, and remember, I can't read her mind, but I think she's sad that she can't experience these extra senses with me in Eutheria. In a way, it's similar to how sad I am that I can't physically see her and touch her in this reality. Things were so simple back when we were both here on Earth. I mean, there was the species difference, of course, and her family didn't really like me, but it worked somehow. We had a real physical relationship, but now it feels almost like having a relationship with a ghost. I hate to think of her, like that, because she's not dead, she's just in a different reality. Sometimes I ask myself why I had to fall in love with a dragon, but I feel guilty when I think that. I mean, I wouldn't trade what we had for anything, but I wish she were still here, or better yet, that I was in Eutheria. If I had fallen in love with a human and she had fallen in love with another dragon, we wouldn't be in this predicament. She'd be happy in Eutheria with him, and I'd be living my current life blissfully unaware of, my past life human wife. Part of me wonders if this is why there's a natural aversion to mating outside your species, so you can enjoy the afterlife together. But that aversion didn't exist with us for some reason. It was like we were meant to be together. I know that reincarnation exists, but I have no idea if heaven or hell exists. I worry sometimes that I'm going to die and that I won't be reincarnated. What if I end up in another place, like heaven or hell or whatever, and there's no way for us to be with each other anymore? The very thought fills me with dread. I lost her so long ago, but the memory is still fresh. I couldn't bear to lose her again. I don't know if catatonic grief is possible with if you're just a disembodied soul in heaven or whatever. I don't know. But if it is, I have no doubt that that's going to happen to me again, if I lose her again. What we have is is a ghost of what it once was, but it's a ghost I'm terrified of losing. Our love is still as strong as it was, but we're separated by dimensions. I worry that even if we're able to make this work, that what little we have is going to be ripped away from us when I die. Part of me thinks it might be best to just accept the loss of each other and try to move on rather than hold on to a memory. But even if I tried, there's no way I could bring myself to love anyone else. And Alira has no hope of ever finding anyone else. Dragons don't get married in Eutheria. If they were single in death, they're single in Eutheria. But even if marriages happened in Eutheria, there are very few single dragons. Dragons always took a mate, unless they died before they reached marrying age. There's no set, age like an age of consent or anything, but dragons generally take a mate when they're about 100 years old, roughly. Like I said, there are more than 5 senses, or I guess 6 if you count telepathy, in Eutheria. A standard marriage ceremony would be nothing in Eutheria, because 2 dragons had to be joined before death in order to share that bond in Eutheria. I sometimes blame myself for not being able to go to Eutheria. I think that maybe, just maybe, if my love were strong enough, I could have made it there. Maybe once I'm done being reincarnated, I'll end up there. I mean, I would give anything or do anything to be there with her. I would gladly commit suicide if I knew I would end up there. Now, before you say anything, no, I am not suicidal. I'm actually terrified of dying and ending up in a place where Alira can't reach me. I'm just saying, if I knew that I would end up in Eutheria when I die, I would end my life in an instant to be with her. I couldn't reach for the gun, knife, noose, pills, whatever, fast enough. Pain be damned. It couldn't possibly be more painful than spending another moment without her. Part of me wonders if I'm just crazy. Any sane man would doubt his sanity writing all this out. It's one thing to live it, but it's quite another to write it all out like this. All I can say is I live a perfectly normal life. I manage a business, own my own house, I have friends just like any normal person. The only thing weird about me is that I have a fucking dragon wife. I mean, Jesus Christ, I sound like a fucking loon. I didn't ask for this, but I love her with all my heart. Now, in case you're wondering what Alira looks like, I've done my best to find her likeness in images I found online. The way modern dragons are portrayed is not very accurate. They're not fierce-looking creatures with sharp, jagged edges and large scales and horns. I mean, Alira's wings are actually made of feathers. I've looked at literally thousands of dragon images online, and I couldn't find anything that truly resembles her. So I decided to focus on the face or in her expression rather than the body. Dragon scales are surprisingly small for their size. They're less than an inch in diameter. They don't have horns, and their heads are quite, aerodynamic, for lack of a better word. They don't have square jaws or flat noses. Alira is pearl white in color. She's absolutely gorgeous. She's so beautiful in the sunlight, but her brilliance is even evident in the darkness, of our cave. And she has the kindest eyes I have ever seen. Dragons are able to make rudimentary facial expressions, although they're more subtle than human expressions. Most of it is in the eyes. She's extraordinarily powerful, but also very gentle, and you can see that in her eyes. Dragons have aspects of both mammals and reptiles. They do give live births, and they have feathered wings, but they also have scales and spines on their backs. Their paws are almost like a dog's, but with sharp talons at the end of each toe. Though they don't have a dew claw like dogs do. Their tongues aren't snake-like, though they are smaller at the tip and get larger further back, in the mouth. They also lack a second eyelid, like most reptiles have today. The feeling of a dragon's skin is hard to describe. It's not like a normal reptile's, though that might just be because, their scales are so much larger than that of a lizard or another, small reptile. I've never felt the skin of a larger reptile like a crocodile, thank God, so I can't really compare it to that. Elira's skin is very smooth and soft, but it doesn't, absorb liquid like human skin does. She dries rather quickly after bathing, but her skin never really feels dry, if you know what I mean, but it doesn't really feel wet either. It's not dry or wet, it's just normal. I don't know how to describe it, I'm sorry. Size-wise, at her full height, she reaches about 15 feet high, including her head and neck. Her wings are approximately 12 feet each. I have no idea what her weight is and no idea how to wear her, so... she is capable of breathing fire, but she doesn't, breathe smoke or fire from her nostrils all the time like some dragons are depicted. She has complete control over that part of her, anatomy. I have no idea how fire breathing works, but it's definitely something I was wary of when we first were starting to get to know each other. I've seen her extremely angry on several occasions, all of them involving her family's disapproval of me, but she's never lost control of her fire breathing, so anyway, the picture that you see on this video, I chose that mostly because of her eyes. I mean, Alira isn't blue, but this catches her eyes very well. It's a great example of the limits of the facial expressions that she's able to do. Where it's different is, she has no horns, her snout is much narrower, she doesn't have a flat nose like in this picture. Her scales are visible, whereas the skin on this dragon looks completely smooth. I mean, I guess it's just an artist's interpretation, but whatever. And her wings are feathered instead of, bat-like, I guess. She also isn't like muscular looking like, I'm talking about, this dragon's upper leg in the picture. It's like a muscular, I don't know. I mean, dragons don't have muscle bundles like humans do. It's very difficult to find a graceful or gentle-looking dragon picture online. Modern depictions of dragons are exaggerated to the extreme. They're actually very beautiful creatures. The males are a bit larger, but otherwise I can't really tell much difference between them. Her teeth are definitely proportionate with the rest of her body, but like everything else about the way modern dragons are depicted, they've been exaggerated. I like the teeth in this image because it's very accurate and the proportions are just right. Whatever the jagged crap is on the side of this dragon's face doesn't really exist either. Like I said, dragons are very smooth and aerodynamic. I know it sounds like or seems like everything is wrong with this image, but this is really the best I could do with what's out there. I'd love to sit down with like a sketch artist or something, but I don't know how to explain where I'm coming up with this image of her, and I'm not really good at explaining details like that. So talking about her like this makes me giddy with excitement. Honestly, I want to explore every inch of her, and not in a sexual way, okay? I just want to be able to feel her again, I love every part of her. I am a little obsessed with showing physical affection, again, not in a sexual way, but more of a hugging, touching, kissing kind of way. I didn't used to be like this, but I suppose I became this way because, I can't really touch her. I'd probably really freak out any girlfriend I had in the future, but that's what happens when you're quote-unquote blue-balled, for lack of a better word, from physical love for so long, while still being able to experience the emotional aspect and the emotional love. It's very confusing and unnatural, to be honest with you here. But honestly, not that it matters. Writing this has made me realize that I can never love another. What we have, we'll have to do, even if it means I'll die alone, without human companionship. I love her too much. There's no more room for anyone else in my heart. And even if I wanted to, I couldn't force myself to stop loving her. As weird or unusual as our relationship was before, now that we're separated by dimensions, it's even weirder. I just hope that one day I'll make it to Eutheria so we can be together once again.